The Our Lady of Perpetual Soccer School in itself was a seed planted and nurtured by a husband and wife team from Lawag City, Ilocos Norte, Mr. Dionisio Alonso Salvador Sr. and Mrs. Carmen Caday Salvador. It was divine inspiration that led the couple to put up a daycare center in 1976. It had an initial enrollment of 50 toddlers housed in a non-operational pelota court along the old Bayan-Bayanan Avenue, corner Molave Street in Marikina. In 1978, the daycare center was registered as a formal school in the Securities and Exchange Commission under the name Our Lady of Perpetual Soccer School, and relocated on rented lots in the corner of Bayan-Bayanan Avenue and Tibugalion Street. OLOPS provided relevant and quality yet affordable education to the youth in Marikina. As enrollment steadily increased, a new level was added each school year, completing the pre-elementary, elementary, and secondary courses. By the year 1985, OLOPS was already operating under full government recognition. It wasn't long after when OLOPS acquired a 1.3-hectare lot along General Ordonez Street in Concepcion, Marikina in 1985. The school gradually expanded and more structures were built, giving rise to OLOPS' new home and a comfortable second home to students from Marikina and neighboring cities and municipalities. Alongside the structural expansion, OLOPS enhanced its curricula to make its students more competitive in intellectual, cultural, and other educational endeavors. As a result, both the grade school and high school were able to maintain impressive records, ranking among the top schools nationwide in government examinations such as the NCEE, NSAT, and NEAT. These achievements fueled the school's desire to extend its service through education as it opened its college department in 1995, thus changing its name to Our Lady of Perpetual Soccer College. Operating under the same mission of academic excellence and character building, OLOPS began offering tertiary education not only to its high school alumni, but also to graduates from other public and private schools. This constant evolution and incessant passion for excellence are the reasons why OLOPS is among the competitive academic institutions in the country today, and one of the best choices for honing young minds.
Hello, everyone who's watching this webinar via Facebook live stream. My name is Etiera Camille N. Santos, College Guidance Associate of the Center for Counseling and Career Development, and I will be your MC for today's event. So, good morning and welcome to our Gender and Development webinar entitled Bahaghari, a talk on gender sensitivity and use of gender fair language, hosted by the Center for Counseling and Career Development. So, what makes our talk for today interesting? Okay, so gender fair language aims at reducing gender stereotyping and discrimination. So there are two principal strategies have been employed to make languages gender fair and to treat women and men symmetrically. That is neutralization and feminization. So later on, our resource speaker will talk about more on this topic, and I hope you are all excited about today's webinar. So before we begin, may I request everyone for a moment of silence to invoke the Almighty's blessing and guidance today's event, followed by the singing of Philippine national anthem and the Olives hymn.
Our Heavenly Father, the fount of all goodness and grace, the cause of wisdom, the source of intelligence, we welcome you, O Lord, to this auspicious gathering of your beloved, who continuously give you thanks for every opportunity to learn something new and become fruitful to the works of your creation. We humbly come to you, not because we are worthy, but because we find ourselves in need of you, who is our strength and our hope, to continue despite the challenges we face in health, prosperity, and our solidarity with one another. We pray that today's gathering, made possible by the grace of advancements in technology and social media, become successful in its endeavors, so we can offer it back to you as our humble offering to honor you, glorify you, and love you through our deeper connection with everyone. May we find bliss in today's session and become more productive children and co-creators of the earth. This we ask and pray through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Mayang magiliw, presang silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisi. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baghaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng buwan, hatid pagsinta, buhay ang langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Lady of perpetual sacred garland, away to the light of cradle of our grateful hearts. We lift your name to the Lord. Upheld by his mighty right hand, we rest in his mercy and grace. Always ready to defend, that your name will forever shine and live. Beloved among us, the great and least away to the light of cradle of our grateful hearts. We lift your name to the Lord. Upheld by his mighty right hand, we rest in his mercy and grace. Always ready to defend, that your name will forever shine and
Okay, a few reminders before we get started. Kindly spread the word about today's webinar on your social media accounts and use the hashtag gender equality. For those who are watching via Facebook live stream, kindly type your questions in the comment section. We'll bring them up during the question and answer portion after the talk. Please be reminded that the evaluation link will be will be the basis for generating the e-certificate of participation. It will be flashed in the middle of the program for 3 minutes, and you will be given, or it will be open for 30 minutes upon flushing the link. So you better listen and watch until the end. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker for today, which is going to talk to you or to us about gender sensitivity and the use of gender fair language. This is a subject in which we should all be deeply interested because it's very timely. Our speaker is a registered psychometrician, a graduate of Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila with a bachelor's degree in psychology and earned 9 education units, and currently pursuing his master's degree in guidance and counseling at St. Joseph College, QC. He has 7 years of experience in performing different guidance tasks as a counselor and 4 years in teaching college students at Our Lady of Fatima University, Antipolo campus. A firm believer in the power of education and liberal thoughts, and a lifelong learner. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Argel M. Cataquiz.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Kim, for that very thorough introduction. Good morning to our viewers from OLOPS and from other universities. I hope you're having a nice day. Ma'am Kim, good morning.
Good morning, sir. So, how are you today, sir?
I'm excited, Ma'am Kim. I'm very excited and thankful that I am part of this very significant webinar. So thank you for inviting me, Ma'am Kim.
Okay, sir. So, kamusta naman po ang ating FGD? Nabalitaan ko po kasi na meron po kayong FGD sa school na tuturuan nyo ngayon.
Yes, Ma'am Kim, that's correct po. No? So, back in 2018, I started this this focus group discussion with students of Our Lady of Fatima University. At ang members po ng FGD na yon ay mga students who probably are questioning and those who are identify as members of the LGBT community. So, I initiated that program para ma-address yung mga special needs ng mga estudyante na
Okay.
not able to meet them personally.
Okay. So, sir, I guess your presentation is okay now.
All right, allow me to share my screen, Ma'am Kim.
Okay, I'll give you the floor now. Thank you, sir. See you
Thank you,
later.
ma'am. I hope you're seeing my screen now. I'm sharing my presentation now. So again, good morning to all our viewers sa mga nanonood sa live stream natin sa Facebook, students of OLOPS and yung mga estudyante from outside OLOPS who are also uh, participating now, joining now. No? So I'll be talking about gender sensitivity and the use of fair language. And I'd like to start again by extending my thanks to the Center for Counseling and Career Development of OLOPS for inviting me as a resource person for this webinar and for being well, I don't want to use this word, but for being progressive and being cognizant of the importance of this topic, lalo na sa ating mga kabataang estudyante. So I'd like to start my presentation by sharing these powerful words by Gloria Steinem. Sabi ni Gloria Steinem, a gender equal society would be one where the word gender does not exist. This is where everyone can be themselves. Now, this is very idealistic, no? And if I may be very honest, medyo malayo pa tayo sa gantong estado ng society at pamumuhay. Pero yung webinars like this, no, these are small steps towards attaining this dream, no, by Gloria Steinem. Small steps probably, but solid steps nonetheless towards attaining a society where everyone is equal, regardless of their gender. So ayan. So I have siguro an hour or so for this discussion, and these are the things that I would like to cover in the length of my discussion. First, we'll talk about gender in the different gender stereotypes. And also we'll be talking about this is the unfortunate part of the discussion. We'll be talking about the gender-based crimes na nangyayari dito sa Pilipinas at kahit sa ibang bansa. And the last part of this webinar will be about gender rights. No? Ano ba yung estado ng gender rights dito sa atin sa Pilipinas? So gender, kanina ko pa sinasabi yung salitang gender. And this entire webinar is about gender. No? So ano daw ba yung mga words na dapat alam natin when we talk about gender? Number one, we have to appreciate and understand the fact that gender is a social construct. Ano ibig sabihin ng social construct? Ibig sabihin, different societies and different cultures around the world have different expectations or different established norms when it comes to gender. So ano ibig sabihin uli nun? Gender is diverse. Something that is or as a norm that is acceptable to us, for example, sa Philippines, may not be necessarily practiced or accepted to another country or another society outside the Philippines. So it's a social construct. Number two, gender is also non-binary. And I think dito nagsisimula yung karamihan ng misconception natin or ng stigma na meron ang mga tao about gender because they believe gender is binary. When we say binary, it's just you're this or this. You can't be in between. And it's not correct. When we talk about gender, we have to understand gender as a spectrum. No, pwedeng nandito ka, but it can also be in between because gender is non-binary. And lastly, this is a word I'd like you to remember about gender. Now, many social scientists and sociologists would agree that gender is fluid. Now, it's not stagnant. And therefore, if it's fluid, it can change over time. Now, parang mahirap yan iproseso ngayon, but later on in our discussion, you would appreciate that better. In fact, my dear students and our viewers, if you would consult the World Health Organization about the definition of gender, The WHO would say that gender refers to the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. Yung parang sinabi ko kanina. This includes norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being a woman, a man, a girl, or a boy, as well as relationships with each other. And therefore, as a social construct, gender varies from one society to another, and since it's fluid, it can change over time. So I hope that's clear with our viewers sa mga nanonood ng ating live stream. But what I'm trying to arrive at is that gender is not synonymous with sex. Well, biological sex, not the act of procreating. Again, I think dito nagsisimula o dito nag-uugat yung karamihan ng misconceptions, karamihan ng katanungan or kaguluhan sa pag-iisip ng mga tao about gender. Kasi for them, gender is the same as sex. When in fact, hindi. Magkaiba po ang gender at ang biological sex. Now, when we talk about, you always have to remember that sex is biological. So, sex can be determined by the reproductive organs or the genitalia na meron yung isang tao, and this is assigned at birth. So, sex, a person can be male or female, no? Sex is also determined with by our chromosomes. Remember, as humans, we have 46 chromosomes. We inherit 23 from each of our parents. And if your chromosomal arrangement is XX or denoted as XX, you're female. If your chromosomal arrangement is denoted as XY, you're male. And sex is also determined by our hormones, no? Hormones that are secreted by our reproductive glands. So for example, sa mga lalaki, you develop secondary sexual characteristics like growing facial hair or the broadening of the shoulders or the deepening of your voice because it is influenced by the secretion of your hormones ng iyong reproductive organs. For girls, for females, hormones is also very important to you kasi this is the culprit. This is the reason why you have monthly visits, no? So siya yung nagdidikta kung kailan ka mag-ovulate. Hormones yung nagko-control sa iyong katawan. So sex is biological. This is assigned at birth and it can be determined by your reproductive organs or your genitalia. Why is sex different from gender? Because again, gender is culturally defined, it's socially constructed, while sex is biological. No, gender kasama dito yung mga roles and responsibilities that we usually associate with men and women. For example, although this is a stereotype for women, no, mas maganda daw na sila ay nasa field ng pag-aalaga, sa caring service jobs, mas appropriate daw yun sa kanila. Pero later, ide-debunk natin yung mga ganitong stereotypes. For men, no, mas katanggap-tanggap daw sa kanila yung mga gawaing gumagamit ng lakas o ng katawan. When it comes to emotions naman, women daw are more emotionally unstable. Sabi nila, again, a stereotype. While men are more aggressive and assertive. And the sad part here is because gender nga is culturally defined, kahit sa benefits o sa when we talk about welfare ng babae at lalaki, medyo nagkakaroon din ng disparity. For one, ang mga babae daw according to the literature, no, women receive lesser pay, no, sa kumpara sa kanilang mga counterparts na lalaki if they do the same job. For example, yung mga women na CEO ng kumpanya, they would be paid less in comparison to male CEOs. Well, in fact, they're just doing the same thing. So kahit yung entitlements natin bilang tao ay naapektuhan ng ating gender, nagkakaroon ng disparity about our gender. Pero I've talked about sex and its difference with gender, pero merong isa pang aspeto ng topic natin ngayon na nagiging ugat ng kaguluhan, lalo na sa mga kabataang tulad nyo. Sometimes kasi you associate a person's gender identity doon sa nakikita nyo sa panglabas. So halimbawa, you see a person or you see a guy na feminine, sasabihin nyo agad that person is gay. What I'd like to tell you, my dear students, is that our gender expression is different from our gender identity. And the illustration of the gender-bred person is probably the most accurate illustration I have come across, to highlight the differences between our identity, our expression, our orientation, and of course, our biological sex. No? In gender identity class, ay, students pala, no, sorry. Gender identity is innate. No, this is how you view yourself. Again, this is a social construct. So you can be a man or a woman, or you can be in between. You can be a gender queer. This is innate. Expression is different, no? Kasi when we talk about expression, regardless of your gender identity, you can be feminine, or you can embrace your femininity, uh, kahit ikaw ay straight guy, or you can be masculine, no, or you can be again in between, no, yung androgynous, yung tinatawag nating androgyny. How you express, how you carry, how you present yourself, this is your gender expression. And what I'm trying to say is that there should be no problem, there should be nothing wrong with how you express yourself, regardless of your gender identity. If you want to be feminine, you can be feminine. If you want to be masculine, go ahead and be masculine. There should be no problem at all when it comes to how you express yourselves. Kasi at the end of the day, it's your life, no? And of course, in biological sex, as I've mentioned earlier, you can either be male or female, depende sa iyong reproductive organs or sa genitalia assigned at your birth. Pero there are also cases na sa humans na may tinatawag tayong intersex, or ang scientific term natin dito is pseudo-hermaphrodites. Bakit pseudo-hermaphrodites? Kasi ang tao hindi siya pwedeng maging hermaphrodite talaga. When we say hermaphrodite kasi, ito ay isang individual na may kakayahan to function both as male or female. Sa lesser forms of animals, no, pwede yun. Merong mga totoong hermaphrodites talaga, like species of invertebrates or salamanders, even fishes, merong mga hermaphrodites. At ang environment nila ang nagde-determine kung sila ay magte-take ng role bilang isang male or female. For humans, it's not the same. It's not as straightforward as that. Kasi ang tao nga, as I've said earlier, are considered to be, yung mga intersex people are considered to be pseudo-hermaphrodites. Anong example nito? No? I don't know if you have watched this episode of Jessica Soho many many months ago. No? Meron dong isang curious case ng isang individual from Mindanao na nung pinanganak siya, nung nakita yung kanyang reproductive organs, no, it appeared as if it's the genitalia of female. It's a female genitalia. Wala siyang outside appendages na ina-associate natin sa mga lalaki, sa males. So, nung pinanganak siya, akala nila siya ay babae. So, binigyan siya ng pangalang babae, nagdadamit siyang pambabae kahit yung mga IDs niya, babae yung nakalagay niyang sex. Pero nung nag-hit siya ng puberty, nakita niya na nagkaroon ng changes sa kanyang katawan. For one, hindi siya nag-develop ng secondary female characteristics like yung paglapad ng hips, no, or yung paglaki ng dibdib or pagkakaroon ng menstrual cycle. Instead, ang na-develop niya is yung mga secondary sex characteristics ng panglalaki, like tinubuan siya ng facial hair, lumalim yung kanyang boses, no? And this happened because unknown to him kasi sa totoo lalaki talaga siya, no, active yung kanyang testes, pero wala siyang outside appendages na usually ina-associate natin sa lalaki. So sa loob pala ng kanyang genitalia, meron siyang active na testes. Ito yung sinatawag nating mga people who are intersex. And siguro we don't have time to actually discuss the entire thing about intersex, pero of all the biological sex, no, sa babae, lalaki at saka sa intersex, pinaka-komplikado yung gender identity with intersex people. So siguro if we will have time in the future, I'll be happy to discuss this in details. No? When we talk about sexual orientation naman, this is kung kanino ka attracted. No? Pwede kang attracted sa members of the opposite sex. You are heterosexual if you're attracted exclusively to members of the opposite sex, Or you can be a homosexual if you are attracted to members of the same sex. But if you are attracted to both sexes, then you can be considered as a bisexual. Again, I'd like you to analyze this gender-bred person, this illustration of gender identity expression, biological sex, and orientation. How they are related to each other, but at the same time different. No, gender identity again is innate. You can be a man, a woman, or a gender queer. Your orientation is kung kanino ka physically, emotionally, or even spiritually attracted. No, your expression is how you carry yourself, how you present yourself. So you can be feminine, you can be masculine, and you can be androgynous also. And of course, your biological sex is determined by your reproductive organs, your chromosomes, no, or your genitalia. So these are the relationships about identity, expression, sex, and orientation. Pero since we're talking about gender and sexuality na rin, daan na lang natin ng konti itong mga karaniwan yung naririnig na term when we talk about gender. No? Linawin lang natin ng konti. Ano ba yung pagkakaiba-iba nila and ano ba yung totoo nilang ibig sabihin? Let's start with heterosexuality. So a heterosexual person is a person who is attracted to members of the opposite sex. Now, if I may use a more casual term, mga straight people, now they are heterosexual people. You are homosexual, as I've said earlier, if you have feelings or romantic inclinations towards member of the same sex. If you are bisexual, you can be both male and female, no? Pero you are attracted to both sexes. So halimbawa, a female bisexual would be attracted to both men and women. Kaya both sexes or bisexuality. Ito yung isang term naman na siguro hindi ganun familiar pero importanteng maintindihan natin yung tinatawag nating cisgender. We use this term to refer to a person na yung kanyang gender identity at yung kanyang biological sex ay nagmamatch. So pinanganak siya with, for example, pinanganak siya with a female genitalia at yung kanyang gender identity ay babae. So kino-consider natin siyang cisgender. The next one is probably the most controversial, the most sensitive of all these terms, no? Yung transgender. Ito yung sila yung members ng LGBTQ community na pinaka nakakaranas ng discrimination and hate and misconception because many people, a big majority of our population does not have any idea about what being transgender is about. So transgender is, it happens when a person, yung kanyang gender identity is different with the sex assigned at birth. So there's a mismatch between the biological sex and gender identity. So a person can be born male with male reproductive organs and genitalia. Pero growing up, this person would find out na siya ay nag-identify as members of the opposite sex. That's why transgender people sometimes undergo a process of transitioning. So they would go a process of transitioning to correct or to reaffirm their gender identities. Next. Again, since we're talking about gender and sexuality, let's try to understand ano ba ibig sabihin ng LGBT, no? Although na-discuss ko na ibang term dito. So, let's start with L, lesbian. Ito ay mga babae who are attracted to women, no? There's just a curious case. Pasok ko uli yung gender expression. Meron ako dating in fact, I'm friends with women who identify as lesbians. And ang common misconception sa kanila is, sa atin kasi sa Pilipinas, pag tinranslate natin yung term na lesbian, ang word na usually ginagamit natin, although inappropriate tong word na to, is tomboy. So a person who is lesbian, ang ine-expect natin sa kanya is, siya ay masculine, maiksi yung buhok, or again, a stereotype, nakamiyo, yung mga nakamiyo. So a woman who identifies as a lesbian na hindi nag-agree sa ganong stereotype, for example, siya ay nagdadamit pang babae, mahaba ang buhok, nagme-makeup, no, naka-heels. So yung ibang tao, nahihirapan silang intindihin at tanggapin that that person is a lesbian. But again, balik tayo dun sa konsepto ng expression. Magkaiba ang iyong sexuality, ang iyong gender identity sa iyong expression. So a person who is lesbian can still be feminine and there should be nothing wrong with that. Pag naman sa lalaki, no, ang term na ginagamit natin madalas, yung G is gay. Pero gay is an umbrella term actually, no, that can refer to any members of the LGBT spectrum. So a gay man, no, is somebody who is attracted to members of the same sex. Again, magkaiba pa rin po dito yung identity at expression. So a gay man can be masculine. No, again, if I may use a more casual term, yung iba parang you find it difficult to accept that gay people can be borta. Parang you would label people who exert effort to build up their bodies, no, na magpapalaki sila ng katawan, then you would label them as borta. And some of you find it inappropriate kasi para sa inyo dapat if you're gay, dapat you're feminine, which is not true, which is not dapat acceptable kasi again, our identities are different from our expression. And again, if you're bisexual, pwede kang lalaki, pwede kang babae, pero you are attracted to both sexes. A curious thing about bisexuality is I came across a study about bisexuality. With bisexual people daw, na although they can be attracted romantically and sexually and spiritually to both sexes, for most bisexual people, meron silang uh, particular sex na, for example, they would be romantically attracted solely with men or sexually attracted naman with women. So they can be attracted to both sexes, but when it comes to romance and to sex, magkaiba yung kanilang preference, no? And of course, yung sinabi ko kanina, yung transgender, these are people whose assigned birth does not match their gender identity. That's why they sometimes go through the process of transitioning. Sometimes they go as far as doing gender confirmation surgery just to match their gender identity with their physical bodies. Pero isa pang term siguro na medyo unfamiliar sa inyo is yung queer. No, yung queer is uh, medyo outdated na ito. Ginagamit to dati during the 70s and 80s, no. Ang queer kasi is somebody who does not identify with gender identities, or kung medyo complicated yung kanyang gender identity, para mas maging simple, that person would identify as queer. Pero a queer person is uh, in the spectrum of the gender identity, na hindi siya straight. Yung intersex naman, kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, pwede siyang magkaroon ng characteristics both pang lalaki at pang babae, depende sa kanyang active reproductive organ. So these are the proper definition of LGBTQ. Actually kasama yung intersex, LGBTQI. Marami pa to. Again, gender is a spectrum. Marami pang gender identities, pero I don't think we have time to talk about it all. Pero I'll be happy to answer your questions siguro later, or you can send me an email or private message if you have questions about this. Pero let me just re-emphasize this, yung LGBT, these are sexual orientations. Transgender is a gender identity. Ulit si L, si lesbian, si gay, at si bisexual, these are gender asexual orientations, while being transgender is a gender identity. I hope that's clear with everyone. Now, let's proceed with gender stereotyping. Bakit meron tayong stereotyping? Kasi nga sabi ko kanina, maraming tao ang hindi komportable or hindi naiintindihan thoroughly yung gender. And sometimes they associate gender with sex. So nagkakaroon tayo ng stereotypes based sa gender or sa expression ng isang tao. This is sad, no? This is dapat we stop doing this, pero it happens no? Sa totoong buhay nangyayari talaga to. So the next part of my discussion would be about this, no? We'll try to debunk yung mga existing gender stereotypes natin sa ating society. I'm sure you would be able to relate with many of these stereotypes, and if you have siguro personal experiences about this stereotyping, pwede kayong mag-comment sa ating live stream para Ma'am Kim, our host, will be able to see them later. So let's start. Our first gender stereotype. These are for women. Sa mga women listeners natin and audience natin, this is for you. Ang stereotype daw is women are supposed to be communal. Dapat daw kayo ay warm, sympathetic, and kind. At dapat daw kayo ay nurturing, motherly, at yung mga trabahong associated sa inyo ay dapat umiikot lang sa ganong idea. This is a stereotype because in reality, this is an outdated stereotype na nanggaling pa sa unang parte sa mga nakaraang parte ng ating kasaysayan, no? Kasi ang mga kababaihan ngayon, they are increasingly more productive, they have more rights. Dapat it's acceptable now for women to be assertive. No, being assertive kasi is a characteristic we usually associate with men. But there are women who are assertive, uh, who possess great leadership skills, no, kaya may mga babae na tayong presidente, leader ng kumpanya, no. So dapat hindi na to ginagamit na stereotype kasi ang babae hindi lamang siya dapat nanay, hindi lang siya dapat nasa bahay, at hindi lang siya dapat nag-aalaga. Kaya rin niyang i-function or kaya rin niyang gawin ang mga bagay na ginagawa ng mga lalaki. So that's our first gender stereotype. Next, eto pa. Women daw are better at multitasking. Na siguro naririnig nyo to sa mga nanay nyo. Yung mga nanay kasi natin, they're good multitaskers, no? They can cook habang naglalaba, habang may pinaplansya, nag-aalaga ng bata. They can do a lot of things in the same time. At siguro dito nagsimula yung stereotype na yung mga babae ay mas magaling mag-multitask kumpara sa mga lalaki. But study shows na in reality, no human brain performs very well when multitasking. We end up doing each task less well and we would if we tackled it individually. So lahat daw tayo, regardless if you're a man or a woman, no, kapag ikaw ay nagmo-multitask, nababawasan yung efficacy nung iyong trabaho, yung ginagawa mo sa iyong trabaho. In fact, in one study of 120 men and 120 women, about their multitasking performance, nagre-reduce yun ng 77% and 66% comparatively, no? Constant interruptions daw can also lead to increased stress, and in some settings such as driving or flying or surgery, if you do multitasking, this can cause serious safety risk. Now, it is better for us, therefore, regardless of if you're a man or a woman, to shift away from multitasking altogether and focus on tasks fully and sequentially. So, I hope we're able to debunk this, that probably if you consider yourself good at multitasking tapos sasabihin mo I'm good at it because I'm a woman, that's not true. Wala tayong solid evidence that would show that women are better at multitasking than men. Next, this is the saddest stereotype. No, I want to emphasize this and be very clear about this next one. In a culture like ours, no, in many cultures also around the world, when we talk about rape, madalas we do victim blaming. Madalas sinisisi natin yung babae kung bakit siya na-rape. No? Ang sinasabi natin is kasi nagdamit siya ng ganon, kasi ganon siya kumilos, ganon siya gumalaw. If I may use this words, no, this parang kasalanan niya kung bakit siya na-rape. And this is inappropriate, and if I may say evil. Why would we blame women for being raped? When in fact, dapat kung paano manamit ang isang babae, kung gusto niyang uminom, kung sino yung mga gusto niyang kasama, hindi naman dapat ito factor kung bakit siya ay makakaranas ng rape. No, dapat ang sinisisi natin dito is yung mga rapist, yung mga manyakis, at yung mga nag-iisip ng masama sa mga babae. Dapat hindi yung mga babaeng na rape ang ating sinisisi. No? Kasi throughout history, ang mga babae limited ang rights, limited ang kanilang expression. So, kahit yung pagboto ng mga kababaihan, this is a modern phenomenon, no? Kailan lang naman kayo pinayagang bumoto? So yung pagsusuot nyo ng damit, kung anong gusto nyo, kung saan kayo komportable, you've earned that right, no, para gawin 'yon. Kaya lang siguro sa topic na ito, which is very sensitive, I would advise women, girls, no, to take care of themselves and to make sure na kung lalabas kayo, regardless if you would be hanging out with friends, is you make sure that you are with good people, na mamili tayo ng tamang tao na ating sasamahan. Next stereotype. Ito pa, men daw are generally better sa trabaho. Mas madalas daw natatanggap sa trabaho ang lalaki, ang mga lalaki. Well, that may be true, pero when we talk about traditional jobs na mga babae ang usually gumagawa, pag ang lalaki daw ay nag-apply sa ganong trabaho o nagkaroon ng ganong trabaho, mas madali para sa society na labelan yung lalaki bilang isang wimpy at hindi siya bigyan ng respeto. Wimpy ibig sabihin lalamya-lamya or no? Tapos pag ang lalaki daw ay isang propesor o isang guro, ang usually sinasabi ng society natin, yan ay wimpy, yan ay lalamya-lamya, kaya siya ay nagturo, which is inappropriate kasi marami tayong lalaking guro na napakahusay magturo. So that is our next stereotype, gender stereotype. Eto pa, this is unfair also, no, being a stereotype. Gay men daw they make good beauticians and parloristas. Yung mga uh, gay people daw, dapat sila lang ay may parlor or nagpapaganda or marunong mag-makeup. And this is inappropriate because gay men can perform and has been noted to be successful in their chosen fields. Wala dapat sa ating gender expression or gender identity, kung anong klaseng trabaho yung ating papasukin. Siguro this stereotype is reinforced by the fact that many of the parlors or beauty centers around us are owned and operated by gay men. Pero to say na yun lang dapat yung trabaho ang kanilang ginagawa is inappropriate and it's not right. Kasi again, regardless of your gender identity and your expression, you should be allowed to do whatever job you can do, especially if you can do it well. So wala dapat ganong issue. Next stereotype. Sabi nila, being an LGBTQ person or if you identify as member of the LGBTQ community, ito daw ay isang sakit. The sad thing is, there was a point in our history na kinoconsider talaga siyang sakit. Pero the World Health Organization has already removed homosexuality as a disease from its international classification of diseases. No, yung ICD-10. Wala na po ang homosexuality sa classification ng disease. This is not considered to be a mental illness. So hindi po ito sakit. No, if you identify as as members of the LGBTQ, wala kang sakit. No, you have no problem. Next. Ito pa. This is probably one of the most common stereotypes na naririnig natin about LGBTQ. People would say that LGBTQ person daw or people daw are just going through a phase na parang kakalakihan din nila yan or kakatandaan din nila yan or ma-outgrow din nila yan ganyang phase ng kanilang buhay. That is not true. Sabi ko kanina students, sorry, gender is fluid. So yes, it's not stagnant, pero instead of using the word temporary, dapat ang ginagamit talaga natin is fluid. No, kasi it can change over time. And a person in his lifetime could identify kahit saang part ng spectrum ng gender identity. Pero to say that, halimbawa meron kayong kakilala or pinsan na bata na medyo nagsushow ng signs ng hindi traditionally dapat associated dun sa kanyang biological sex, you would hear your elders or yung mga titas nyo or titos nyo sasabihin nila, bata pa yan, magiging lalaki din yan pagdating. That's inappropriate because again, gender is fluid. No? Next. Ito pa. People assumes that if you're gay, regardless if you're lesbian or a gay man, dapat you act and behave in a certain way. Na dapat you look or act differently. So if you're gay, dapat malambot ka, dapat mahaba buhok mo, dapat you do makeup. So when you tell people na I'm actually gay, halimbawa, no, tapos sasabihin nila, di nga, hindi ka halata. Parang nasusurprise pa sila as if kailangan mong mag-conform sa ganong norms na if you're gay, kailangan ganun yung ginagawa or paano mo kinikerry yung iyong sarili, which is inappropriate also because again, as I've said earlier, gender expression is not equal to our gender identity. So if you identify in a particular gender spectrum, tapos iba yung iyong gender expression, there should be no problem with that at all. All right? So I hope we were able to debunk the many stereotypes that we associate with gender. Napakarami pang stereotypes na laganap sa ating society at sa mundo. Pero again, we don't have time to talk about everything no na stereotypes. But now, let's go to the part of this webinar na pag-uusapan naman natin yung the sad reality about gender-based crimes and discrimination na uh, dapat hindi nangyayari sa ating society pero because of the misconception, because of the hate no about people who are different no na nagpe-perpetuate itong gantong klaseng discrimination at ganitong hate sa members ng LGBTQ community. For example, I'm sure you would remember these words from a prominent politician. Very sikat na politiko ito. No, there was a point na sabi niya ang mga members daw ng LGBTQ ay mas masahol pa sa hayop. This is something I don't particularly understand because when we talk about gender and gender identities, bakit parang parang mas katanggap-tanggap sa society natin ang mga mamamatay tao, ang mga magnanakaw, ang mga sinungaling, no? Kumpara kung ikaw ay genderqueer. If you're genderqueer, parang ang tingin kagad sa iyo ay masama kang tao. Bakit gano'n? Bakit kinukonsidera ng society na yung mga individual who identify as genderqueer is quote-unquote mas masahol pa sa hayop? Bakit kailangan ikumpara ang isang tao sa isang hayop just based on that person's gender identity? This is cruel. This is inappropriate. This is very, very unkind because I am friends and I know a lot of people who are genderqueer pero sila ay mabubuting tao. Hindi sila nananakit ng kapwa, hindi sila nanlalamang ng kapwa, hindi sila nagnanakaw at hindi sila pumapatay. Wala silang ginagawang masama, they're just being true to themselves. Pero bakit ganun na lang kaliit or kapangit ang pagtingin ng society sa mga individual who identify as genderqueer? Next. No? Sa Pilipinas, lawmakers and school administrators have recognized that bullying of LGBT youth is a serious problem and designed interventions to address this. No? In 2012, if I may just read this, in 2012, the Department of Education or DepEd, which oversees primary and secondary schools, enacted the Child Protection Policy. Ito po ay isang batas na nagbabawal o nagpo-prohibit sa pangbubuli ng mga kabataan, not only members of LGBT, pero kabataan in general because of their gender or based on their gender expressions or gender identity. Ito ay isang batas na napakagandang batas sana pero in reality, hindi naman ito masyadong na-enforce. No? At napaka-importante nito kasi ang ating mga kabataan, students like yourselves, no, you spend almost all of your time in schools, lalo na nung face-to-face class pa. At dapat ang ating mga eskwelahan ay it's a safe space for students regardless if you're straight or you're genderqueer. Dapat hindi ito pugad ng or hindi dapat tinotolerate ng eskwelahan ang pambubuli or pananakit or pag-discriminate sa isang bata, sa isang estudyante just based on that student's gender identity or expression. No, tingnan niyo yung mapang pinapakita ko sa inyo. Only 15% of Filipinos that reside in areas protected by ordinances against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and identity. Sa buong Pilipinas, yung mga lugar lamang na naka-blue ang may mga ordinansang nagbabawal sa gender-based crimes and discrimination. Buong Pilipinas to ha. So ang meron lamang is Puerto Princesa, Iloilo Province, no, Agusan, Davao, Jensan. No, sa Antipolo meron tayo sa Rizal, Cavite, and Batangas Province. But for the entire country, sa total number of population natin, 15% lamang ng mga Pilipino ang protektado ng ordinansa na nagbabawal na sila ay i-discriminate based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. Wala tayong national law or national walang batas na nagsasabi o nagbabawal na ang isang individual ay bawal siyang i-discriminate based on sa kanyang gender identity. At kung titingnan natin to sa mas malawak na konteksto sa buong mundo, no, makikita niyo yung mga bansang nasa screen nyo na kulay blue or medyo light blue. These are countries that are more tolerant or have actual laws that prohibit discrimination or crimes against individual na nag-identify as LGBTQ. So yung mga bansa, mga western countries, no, like European countries, North American countries. Pero those countries that are in orange or lalo na yung mga naka-red, ito ay mga bansa na merong batas na nag-criminalize against homosexuality. So if you're gay in these countries, you can go to jail just because you're being gay. Just because you're gay. No? It's as if you have murdered or killed somebody or plundered your nation, pero you can go to jail. Parang ini-equate nila sa ganong level yung iyong kasalanan just because you're not straight or just because you identify as genderqueer. So, sa Pilipinas, in general, medyo tolerant, no? Pero hindi accepted ang LGBTQ community. Tolerated, but not accepted. Sa buong mundo, as you can see in the illustration, a huge portion of the Middle East, the entire African continent almost, Russia, India and China, Indonesia, they have laws criminalizing homosexuality. So this is a sad thing. In fact, dito sa Pilipinas, napaka-prevalent ng gender-based crime. Siguro kung nanonood kayo ng balita, bigyan lang natin ng mukha ng kaunti yung mga taong nabibiktima, yung mga kababayan natin na nabibiktima ng gender-based crimes or hates. For example, the picture you're seeing now is the family of late Madonna or Donna Niera na natagpuan siya. She's a 23-year-old transgender woman at natagpuan na lang siyang patay at yung bangkay niya ay lumulutang sa ilog sa malapit sa kanilang bahay. Hindi alam kung bakit siya pinatay, hindi alam kung ano yung naging kasalanan niya. Pero ang theory is, biktima siya ng hate crime. Siya ay pinatay just because she's transgender. This is the reality of kung ano yung na-experience ng mga kabataan at ng mga taong nag-identify as LGBTQ sa Pilipinas. Na you can be discriminated, you can be denied using a particular establishment or denied entry to a particular establishment, but ang pinakamalala, you can be killed just because you're transgender. Imagine a society that's forgiving sa ganitong klaseng krimen, no, na hahayaan lang na makatakas or hindi mabigyan ng katarungan yung mga naging biktima ng gender-based crimes. Again, wala siyang ginawang masama, wala siyang pinatay, wala siyang ninakaw, pero siya ay pinatay just because siya ay transgender. Ito ang katotohanan ng gender-based crimes and discrimination sa Pilipinas. No, at least 50 transgender or gender non-binary individuals have been murdered across our country since 2010. And the number is likely higher than 50. Do baka may mga hindi pa nare-report. 50 people killed for being transgender or non-binary. In the Philippines lang yan ha, just in our country. There is currently no national legislation that would protect LGBTQ individuals from discrimination in the Philippines. Although the sexual orientation and gender identity and expressions, or the SOGI bill, would see those who discriminate against LGBTQ individuals in the Philippines face fines or jail time. No, whatever the circumstances of their murder, yung victims daw, yung mga victims ng gender-based crime, they have little recourse for action. No? Wala silang chance to have justice. No? In the past 6 years, the Philippine National Police has publicly confirmed investigations into the murders of 8 trans women just in the past 6 years. Pero may nababalitaan ba kayo na nabigyan ng katarungan, no, kapag ang isang individual ay pinatay because of his or her gender identity? Wala naman ata tayong nababalitaan. So napakaliit ng tsansa ng mga taong ito na makakuha ng hustisya. Pero ang gender-based crimes, hindi lang siya pang members of LGBTQ community. Sa Pilipinas at sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo, ang mga babae ay biktima ng violence, no? Biktima sila ng pang-aabuso at pananakit just because they're women, just because they're mothers and housewives. In fact, violence against women can be considered a worldwide and a national epidemic, no? Sabi dito in a panel discussion during the International Women's Day Summit in 2019, no, Professor Claudio said that violence against women should be considered urgent and it should be labeled as a worldwide and a national pandemic. Lalo na ngayong panahon ng pandemya, no? Sa statistics would say na mas tumaas yung kaso ng mga domestic abuses and domestic violence kasi naka-lockdown ang mga Pilipino. So mas tumaas yung tsansa na sila ay maabuso at masaktan at pahirapan ng kanilang mga domestic partners nung panahon ng lockdown. Violence against women causes too many problems. For example, in many researches, no, personality disorders usually has a link to that severe childhood abuse. So yung mga kabataang babaeng inaabuso, binibenta for prostitution, no, this can have lifelong repercussions with their personality and the trauma that they would endure for a very, very long time. Violence against children and women affect the lives and welfare of millions of Filipinos, no, and around the world. Many people and children in the Philippines suffer multiple types of violence. The multiple negative sequelae of this violence can be long lasting throughout the lifespan and across generations as well, impacting individuals, relationships, communities, and our society at large. No, yung mga kabataang babae na inabuso, binenta for prostitution, nakaranas ng pananakit, pang-aabuso, ito ay nakakaapekto sa kanilang pamumuhay at sa klase ng kanilang magiging relasyon in the future. And pwede ring maapektuhan yung mga komunidad na ginagalawan nila because merong dinadalang trauma yung mga biktima ng abuse. So you see, when we talk about gender-based crimes and discrimination, lahat tayo pwedeng maging biktima nito. Lahat, if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're genderqueer, you can be a victim of gender-based crimes. At dapat hindi yun nangyayari. Dapat meron tayong solid legislation, dapat may ngipin ang ating mga batas that would prohibit this sorts of violence and discrimination that are based on our gender. So the third and the last part of my discussion is about the current status of gender rights in the Philippines. Now, a while ago, shinare ko na sa inyo yung Child Protection Policy Act. Pero before I proceed, no, I just want to clarify and to say that gender rights are human rights, no? Ang pag-recognize natin sa gender rights ng isang tao is akin to recognizing the rights of that person as a human being, no? In fact, according to the United Nations, gender equality is the very heart of human rights and the United Nations value. Protecting and promoting women's human rights is the responsibility of all nations. Pero ang katotohanan, kagaya ng pinakita ko sa inyo kanina, in practice, there are many areas in the country and around the world na women are being victimized and men and genderqueer individuals would suffer from hate crimes and gender-based crimes and discrimination on the basis of their gender identity. Pero let's talk about what is the premise muna of gender sensitivity. And when we talk about gender sensitivity, I'd like you to all to remember that all lives matter. Na lahat ng buhay mahalaga. Those who are against gender equality, they argue against it because of this misconception about gender sensitivity and gender equality. Unang-una, gender sensitivity and gender equality is not the same as pitying women. Hindi tayo nagbibigay ng effort or nag-enact ng laws to protect women because naaawa tayo sa kanila. No. We strive for gender equality because it's our basic human right, not because naawa tayo in a particular member of a gender identity. Also, gender equality and gender sensitivity is not male bashing. No, hindi naman natin sinisisi ang mga lalaki for gender inequalities. It's just that in the society that we are in now, mas malalaki yung privileges ng mga kalalakihan. So dapat ipinapantay natin yung opportunities, yung protection ng mga lalaki at ng mga babae. Gender sensitivity and equality is also not anti-male. And this is not a war of the sexes. Hindi tayo naglalaban-laban dito. This is for everyone. Na gender equality and gender sensitivity is for everyone because everyone can be a victim of gender inequality. Maswerte ka kung hindi ka pa nabibiktima pero wag naman sana, no? Pero everyone can be a victim. So if we have laws that prohibits this, mas maganda para sa ating lahat. In fact, sa Philippines class, meron tayong dalawang laws na nagpaprotekta sa ating mga kabataan against gender-based crimes or discrimination or hate crimes. Na yung binanggit ko kanina, yung Child Protection Policy noong 2012, this was enacted by DepEd na nagsasabi na it should be prohibited or it should be a policy of all academic institutions to prohibit acts of bullying and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Pero at large, meron din tayong tinatawag na anti-bullying law. So this is a legislation that adopts policies to address the existence of bullying in their respective institutions. Ang sinasabi ng batas na ito is ang mga eskwelahan dapat merong bullying committee no, na nag-oversee ng mga cases at nag-enact ng policies and programs that would diminish bullying sa kanilang mga academic institutions. And for some of you, parang hindi naman importante ito o parang some of you might even argue that bullying is part of growing up. That's not true. Because a person, a young individual na naka-experience ng bullying, no, pwedeng yung psychological effects nun ay dalhin niya hanggang sa kanyang pagtanda o kanyang paglaki. So dapat pinagbabawal talaga natin ang bullying. Pero ang pinakamaganda sanang batas na magpoprotekta sa ating lahat, regardless of our gender identity, is yung tinatawag nating SOGI Equality Bill. Now, you're seeing on your screen right now si Representative Roman, no, siya ang kauna-unahang transgender legislator sa Pilipinas at isa siya sa mga nagsusulong ng SOGI bill sa ating bansa along with Senator Hontiveros and Representative Kakabagaw. Ano ba yung SOGI bill, no? Marami siguro sa inyo ang nakarinig na at ang nakabasa ng maling information about SOGI bill, no? Kaya hindi ito maipasa-pasa sa ating bansa kasi marami sa atin hindi naman talaga naiintindihan kung ano ibig sabihin ng SOGI. Una kong gustong sabihin is that SOGI is for everyone. SOGI stands for sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And every one of us has SOGI. No, hindi lang members of the LGBTQ community. SOGI bill is important because in terms of career opportunities, na may mga studies na nagsasabi na ang mga kumpanya daw sa Pilipinas, hindi sila accepting of LGBTQ people. Hindi nila i-hire ang isang tao on the basis of its gender, regardless of the potential and the capacity of that person. And above and foremost, the SOGI bill is an anti-discrimination bill. Isa itong batas na magbabawal sa mga tao sa Pilipinas, sa mga kumpanya, sa mga organizations, na mang-discriminate, mang-ape, o gumawa ng mga inappropriate acts on the basis of gender. Ano ba yung mga provisions daw ng SOGI bill? Ano ba yung ipagbabawal ng SOGI bill kung sakaling ito ay maipapasa? No? Ang SOGI bill, by the way, is marami na tong different forms, no? Parang, if I could be wrong here, pero parang as early as 1999, meron ng first version nito sa Kongreso, pero hindi ito maipasa-pasa. Ang pinakamataas na level na napuntahan nito is sa Senado, although this was again rejected by the Senate. Pero ano daw ba yung provisions ng SOGI bill? No, ano daw ba yung mga ipagbabawal? Magbabanggit lang ako ng ilan, no? Sa SOGI bill, ipagbabawal ang pag-inflict ng stigma against gender identity and expression using media, textbooks, and other platforms. Also sa SOGI bill, ipagbabawal yung pag-deny o pagtanggi no, sa access ng mga individual sa public and health services. Kasi merong mga instances na members of the LGBTQ community will not be admitted to hospitals or would be denied medical care just because of their gender identities, no? Also, provision ng SOGI is yung pagbabawal sa pag-deny ng application for professional licenses and similar documents, again, on the basis of sex, no? Pasok din dito yung pagbabawal ng pag-publish ng information intended to out, no, or alam niyo yung term na to out a person or reveal the SOGI of a person without that person's consent, no, na madalas nangyayari ngayon sa ating komunidad, sa ating society, na pag may narinig kayong chismis about a particular person, no, hindi pa man kino-confirm ng taong iyon ay naipakalat na yung chismis about that person's SOGI. Na pinagbabawal din sa SOGI yung preventing children under parental authority from expressing their SOGI. And also dito sa SOGI, if you would see the provisions that I'm reading, no, ang ultimate goal nito is maging equal lang tayong lahat, no. Hindi magkaroon ng discrimination at hindi magkaroon ng mga inappropriate treatment or actions sa kahit sinong tao on the basis of their gender identity. Babae, lalaki, or genderqueer, dapat sa mata ng batas tayo lahat ay equal, no? Pero itong mga binabanggit ko ngayon, these are legislations, these are out of our hands, if I may be honest, no? Ito ay trabaho ng ating mga mambabatas at trabaho ng mga nasa Senado. Pero personally, ano ba yung mga pwede nating gawin to address gender inequality? Ano ba yung mga bagay na kaya nating gawin ngayon bilang mga kabataan, bilang mga estudyante, para ma-address natin yung gender inequality sa ating komunidad? Unang-una siguro at isa sa pinaka-epektibo is yung paggamit natin ng gender fair language. No, to define this, no, or to discuss this, allow me to read this short story that has something to do with using gender fair language. If you can read with me, or if you want to listen, just pay attention. So I'll read this short story. A father and his son were driving to a ball game when their car stalled on the railroad tracks. In the distance, a train whistle blew a warning. Frantically, the father tried to start the engine, but in his panic, he couldn't turn the key, and the car was hit by the onrushing train. An ambulance sped to the scene and picked them up, and on the way to the hospital, unfortunately, the father died. The son was still alive but mortally wounded, and he needed immediate surgery. The moment they arrived at the hospital, he was wheeled into an emergency operating room, and the surgeon came in expecting a routine case. However, on seeing the boy, the surgeon blanched and muttered, "I can't operate on this boy. He is my son." The question is, paano daw yun nangyari? No? Why can't the surgeon operate on the boy? Kasi yun daw bata ay kanyang anak. Pero sabi sa storya, patay na daw yung tatay. Now, this is a problem because many of you fail to comprehend and appreciate the fact that the surgeon can be the boy's mom. Pwedeng yung mag-oopera sa kanya, yung surgeon na yon, ay kanyang nanay. Pero nagkaroon tayo ng kalituhan kasi when we hear the word surgeon, this is a profession we normally associate with men. Kaya nung pinabasa niyo yung istoryang to, medyo naguluhan kayo na, teka lang, sabi patay na yung tatay. Bakit siya pa rin yung surgeon? Kasi nga, our brain is default, no? Ang default function ng ating brain is to associate surgeon or the profession of being a surgeon with men. And we failed to comprehend and appreciate that the surgeon can be the boy's mother. So dito papasok at magiging importante yung paggamit natin ng gender fair language. Now, gender fair language is the use of words in writing and in speech in such a way where no gender bias is expressed or no gender is being limited and trivialized. The use of gender fair language aims to promote gender equality through eliminating biased terms that exclude, constrain, or discriminate people based on their gender. Madali lang itong gawin, class, students and audience. Na madali lang itong gawin it would take some practice, pero if you would remember this part of the discussion very well, then I think magiging mas gender fair ang ating society. For one, no, we should avoid using he and his to represent both male and female, as it includes the latter or vice versa. Na dapat gagamit tayo lagi ng double pronouns. For example, no, tingnan niyo yung original statement. Each student shall pass his paper before the deadline. We use the pronoun his to represent both male and female students of the class, which is gender biased. The gender fair version of that is each student shall pass his or her paper before the deadline. See, it's easy to do. It's a simple thing to do. Let's just be aware of the pronouns that we use, not to expose ourselves to gender fair language. Drop possessive pronouns or substitute with an article. For example, look at the original statement. The average student is worried about his grades. The gender fair version of this is that the average student is worried about grades. So it's gender neutral. Now, ang default tendency kasi natin is to use the pronoun his to refer to everyone. But that's not gender fair. It's actually gender biased. Or we should avoid unnecessary labels on gender, especially sa profession or sa trabaho. No, when we talk about guards, no, pag babae, we refer to them as lady guards or lady teachers or lady firefighters or woman president, which is gender biased. Kasi at the end of the day, they're still doing the same job. So dapat ang tawag natin sa kanila are firefighters, no, guards or teachers or presidents. In fact, if I would share to you this quote by the president of Harvard University, sabi niya, I am not the woman president of Harvard. No, I am the president of Harvard. So it's biased to refer to her or to anyone in that particular position as the woman president. Kasi parang may ina-attach kang characteristic kagad sa kanyang pagiging presidente. When in fact, she is just doing her job or she's performing her job as a president. And how can you, as young people, I know you're on social media, no? Madalas marami sa inyo ang gumagamit ng social media, no? So these are just my advices to you kung paano tayo mas magiging responsible sa paggamit ng gender fair language at sa pag-recognize ng ating diversity ng ating identity bilang isang tao. Una-una, when you're online, you always have to be kind. No, if a person would say something, you don't have to go over and beyond, no, sa pag-contradict sa kanya just because you don't believe in his or her statement. Na pwede mo naman siyang i-correct na maayos or kung para sa kanya yun yung nagiging komportable siya sa kanyang mga pinopost na picture, who are you to say wag? Who are you para pagbawalan siya sa kanyang gustong gawin? Now, we also have to be respectful of our differences, especially online, no, sa social media nga. Kasi we're interconnected now more than ever because of social media. So a lot of people would say things about themselves. If it is their truth, again, who are we to bash or to say something negative about that person? And ultimately, whenever you go online, I want you to remember and reflect our webinar today for you to be able to understand that human sexuality and gender identity is very, very diverse. So in the end, I want you to use your social media very responsibly. And this webinar is very important because ang latest statistics, especially to young people like yourselves, because according to the latest statistics, around 19.8 million ang number ng Filipino youth from ages 15 to 24. This is almost 20 to 25% of our entire population. Napaka-importante that you are aware about this topic, that you know things about this topic because kayo yung magdadala ng ating kinabukasan. You will be the legislators of the futures. You will enforce the norms of the future. And if as early as now, mas naiintindihan at mas na-appreciate natin yung diversity ng ating gender identities, I believe yung shinare ko kaninang dream ni Gloria Steinem na a world that is gender equal, no, from being idealistic, from being a dream, it will be a dream that is much closer to reality. Thank you very much for listening. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Or if we can't answer all questions, you can contact me using my email address and my personal number. Thank you and good morning again to everyone.
Thank you so much, Sir Argel. That was indeed a very enlightening talk. We hope that everyone watching and listening benefited from the topic discussed by our dear resource speaker. Okay. Now I'd like to invite you to ask questions. And this question and answer segment is for informational and educational purposes. We are not able to respond specific questions or comments about personal situation. Okay, we will give you time to ask questions now. Again, for those who are watching via Facebook live stream, kindly type your questions in the comment section of the stream. Okay, so it looks like we have a few questions. We have here from Kay. What is the difference between bisexual and pansexual? Sir?
Alright. What's the difference between bisexuality and pansexuality? Now, a bisexual individual, as I've said earlier, is somebody who is romantically or sexually attracted to either men or women. A pansexual does not believe in gender identities, or mas tanggap niya yung tao regardless of that person's gender identity. So for a pansexual individual, the gender identity of a person or the sexual orientation of a person does not matter. Ang minamahal ng mga pansexual is the person itself. Kaya siya pan kasi it's encompassing. It's everyone. So that's the main difference between bisexuals and pansexuals. That's a very beautiful question. Thank you for asking that, Ma'am Kim.
Okay, sir, we have here another one from Kai. Sir, what do you think of the usage of they, them as a singular gender natural pronoun?
I approve this. Now, if a person would like to be referred as they, them, no, kasi nakakaabala sa atin na we would refer to them as they or them. So I think this is okay. I think this should be practiced.
Okay, so also we have received here some message or questions from our page. Ano po ba yung metrosexuality?
Okay, so ah yung iba kasi, Miss Kim, no, ang iniisip nila sa metrosexuality, it's synonymous with being gay or being homosexual. When in fact, a metrosexual person is actually a heterosexual male. No, straight guy ito. Kaya lang, tinatawag siyang metrosexual kasi this person is uh, an urban dweller probably na may refined taste sa fashion, for example, no, na meron siya unlike dun sa mga traditional attributes na associate natin sa mga lalaki na medyo rugged. A metrosexual would take care of his appearance, no, would keep up to date with fashion or the trends. That's why we call them metrosexual kasi they are urban dwellers, hence metro. No, but these are
Okay.
not gay people. No, most they are heterosexual men.
Okay, so meron pa po dito, sir. What is your opinion about the way the media represent LGBT community? Do you think there is a progress na po with this?
Progress, yes. Merong kahit papaanong progress. I came from a period where when no, ang only representative sa mass media ng LGBT person, for example, is si Roderick Paulate. At dito nabuo yung mga stereotypes natin about gay men. That gay men should be loud, extravagant, no, dapat they're assertive or they do makeup, they do beauty stuff, which is inappropriate, and it's not fair for gay men na hindi naman may ganong inclination. So ang portrayal ngayon ng mass media, ng ating media sa LGBT community is meron kahit papaano improvement. But do I think na significant yung improvement? Probably hindi. Sa Western media siguro, pero dito sa Pilipinas, medyo conservative pa rin ang ating media sa pag-portray ng LGBT issues. Pero steps are being undertaken, and I appreciate the small improvements in the portrayal of the LGBT community.
Okay. So sir, medyo madami tayong questions.
Mukha
So,
nga, ma'am.
the other question here is, ano po ba ang status ng SOGI bill sa Pilipinas?
Hmm. As I've said earlier, yung Soji Bill, in its different versions and forms, as early as the 1990s, meron na siyang version sa Kamara or sa ating Kongreso. Hindi ito lumalagpas sa level ng Kongreso, pero siguro around a year or so ago, umabot to sa Senado. But unfortunately, the bill was still rejected. Hindi ito naipasa ng Senado at hindi ito na-endorso sa Pangulo para maging isang batas. Pero proponents of the SOGI bill, particularly si Senator Hontiveros and si Representative Bagao, no, they're still working very hard para ihain uli ito sa Kongreso at para maybe chances would be better, or our chance would be much better in the future na maipasa ito sa Senado at maaprubahan bilang isang batas. Depende kasi sa politika ng ating bansa. Pero I'm hopeful that the SOGI bill will become a law in the future.
Okay, so I guess I'll just read last two. So the first one is, what are your thoughts about coming out? Do you really need to do that?
What are your thoughts on coming out? This is a very important question, Miss Kim. So,
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts about coming out is you don't have to come out. If you don't feel like you don't want to come out, then don't. No, at the end of the day, it's your life, and how you live it, it's your business. You don't have to tell people na you're this or that just for them to understand you. Na yung perception sa'yo ng tao kung paano ka tinitignan ng tao, it's their business also. Wala ka namang magagawa dun eh. But if it makes you comfortable to let people know that you're not straight or you identify in a particular spectrum ng gender identity, then you can do it. Do it. No, I would encourage you to do it. But if it doesn't make you feel comfortable, if you have hesitations, if you fear like your family or friends would turn against you, would treat you differently, or if you're just not ready yet, then don't come out. It's your choice, no, if you will come out or not. Kasi at the end of the day nga, it's your life, and how you live it is your business.
Okay, for the last question, are boys or men by nature polygamous?
Are boys or men by nature polygamous? No, ibig sabihin ng polygamous, maraming partner, maraming asawa, no. Well, there is no single conclusive evidence or study that would say or that would prove that yes, men are born polygamous. Wala pong kahit anong teorya or research or artikulong magsasabi or magja-justify na ang mga lalaki ay polygamous at dapat silang mambabae at magkaroon ng maraming partner. Pero we have to view polygamy in the context of history, kasi throughout our history as human beings, no, polygamy is a socially accepted practice, lalong-lalo na ng mga mayayamang lalaki. Kasi before sa panahon natin ngayon na we marry out of love, dati, they marry out of convenience. So yung mga lalaki dati, they have to marry because they have to produce an offspring para magkaroon sila ng tagapagmana. And because of the klase ng healthcare siguro dati, hindi lahat ng kababaihan ay may kakayahang magdala ng bata or nagkakaroon ng problema sa pagdadala ng anak, ng bata. So yung mga lalaki, ang ginagawa nila is magkakaroon sila ng mga mistress, mga concubines, o kapag hari ka, no, meron kang harem, may harem ka na puro babae doon, that pwede kang magkaroon ng offspring from other women other than your wife. Pero this is a socially approved practice noon na ngayon ay hindi na natin ini-encourage. No, may kabaliktaran yan, Miss Kim. No? Sa babae, ang tawag naman doon is polyandry. Pag lalaki, polygamy. Pag babae, polyandry. No, ngayon, in majority of the countries around the world, monogamy is the legal practice. No? Yung 1:1 lang. But do I say na polygamy is not happening? It still happens, no? Marami pa rin tayong naririnig na issues at marami tayong nababalitaan na men would have relationships, kahit women naman people would have relationships outside of their marriage, which is illegal. No, ito ay bawal sa batas at ito ay hindi dapat natin ginagawa kasi nagkakaroon tayo ng trauma, na psychological trauma from experiencing this kind of abuse. Pero are men born polygamous? No. We encourage men to be polygamous in the past.
Okay. So, eto sir, last na talaga before we end our open forum. Um, the question is, what is the meaning of asexuality? And is it a complex orientation?
Asexual is a person who does not identify with any of the gender spectrum or gender identity. Now, some of you might think this is unnatural or inappropriate even, no, parang hindi siya dapat nangyari. But again, as I've told you earlier, gender is a spectrum and it's fluid, and how a person identifies his gender or her gender, dapat wala tayong hindi natin siya pinakikialaman. So if a person is not comfortable being labeled as a particular gender or being belonging to a particular gender identity, walang nagmamatch sa kanya, a person would be asexual, not interested in sex at all, then we should just let that person be. Kasi nga, at the end of the day, without tolerance and without respect, dito nag-originate yung ating discrimination at yung ating gender-based crimes.
Okay. I guess thank you all thank you for all your questions, our dear students and viewers. As much as we want to accommodate all of your questions, we have limited time only. So please raise your questions on our Facebook page, and we will post frequently asked questions or FAQs after the webinar. Again, thank you so much, Sir Argel. Okay. At this point, I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude and thanks to Sir Argel for being our resource speaker and for sharing his knowledge and wisdom regarding gender equality. We will surely apply and share this learning so that we could face adversities with hope and optimism. And now, let us proceed with the awarding of the certificate for our resource speaker. Allow me to read the citation. Our Lady of Perpetual Soccer College, General Ordonez Street, Concepcion 1, Marikina City, Philippines. Certificate of Appreciation. Argel Cataquiz, RPM, for sharing his valuable knowledge as a resource speaker in the webinar Bahaghari, a talk on gender sensitivity and use of gender fair language, given this 20th of November 2021. Signed by CLC, CCBT, CCCD College OIC, Armaida Salvador Samaniego, PhD, President. Again, thank you so much, Sir Argel. Okay. On behalf of CCCD, I would like to thank everyone who watched and listened to today's webinar. A certificate of participation will be generated once you finish answering the activity evaluation Google form that is being flashed on the screen at this very moment. Okay? Please be reminded that the evaluation form will be closed 30 minutes from now. May I request Sir Argel, Ma'am Cass, Mr. Junito, and Okay, sorry about that. So again, hi Miss Cass. There. So this is for our photo opportunity. So everybody smile. Okay, thank you so much, moms and sir. And special thanks to all the viewers, to the professors, and to our dear students who are present and watching this webinar via Facebook live stream. As promised, grade incentives will be given to the students who registered and successfully answered the evaluation form of this event. Just present the screenshot of your registration and e-certificate of attendance to your respective instructors who will give you grade incentives. Please follow our official Facebook page at Center for Counseling and Career Development, or type www.facebook.com/allops.cccd, and our YouTube channel, just search allops-cccd for more information and updates. And we hope for your continuous support in our endeavors. Okay. As we conclude this activity, we would like to request everyone for a moment of silence to thank the Lord for this opportunity to be with you all in this meaningful activity.
Thank you, Lord, for this successful seminar. We know that you have blessed all that have attended. May you keep on blessing us as we go exit this venue and apply what we have learned from the wisdom and expertise the speakers and materials have presented. Grant us the will and fortitude to apply the knowledge we have garnered this day for the good of all men. In your name, amen.
Amen. All right. What a lovely day to end our program. Once again, this is Miss Kim Santos, College Guidance Associate of the Center for Counseling and Career Development, wishing you all safe and God bless us all. Bye.